Nyari sat quietly in the last row of the large hall, her cat-like ears twitching with every small sound. She was nervous. Her silver-blue tail wrapped tightly around her leg. She had never heard a real human before, not in person, not this close. Today was different today. A real human was visiting the academy. He was going to speak in front of all the students from many alien races. His name was Daniel, and he was known for his deep voice and calm way of speaking. Some of the girls were already whispering about him, giggling, smiling. Nyari stayed silent, watching. The hall lights dimmed, and the spotlight turned on. Daniel walked onto the stage. He wore a simple Earth-style jacket and pants. His dark hair was short, and he looked kind, not scary. Not like the images she had seen in the history files. Then he spoke. "Hello, everyone," he said. Nyari gasped. Something inside her chest moved. Her heart beat faster. Her pupils widened. Her ears twitched hard. Her tail unwrapped and stood up straight. Her cheeks turned warm. She grabbed her seat to stay still, but her hands were shaking. His voice was deep, soft but powerful, like it was calling her, like it knew her. She covered her mouth and stood up quickly. Her breathing was fast now. Every second he spoke, her body felt more strange, hot, dizzy, like she was falling. She ran out of the hall before anyone could stop her. Outside, she collapsed against the wall, her chest rising and falling fast. She didn't understand what just happened, why her legs felt weak, why her skin felt sensitive, why her mind could only think of one thing: his voice. It can't be. She whispered, "That instinct is extinct." Right? Nyari didn't go to lunch. She didn't go to her next class. She stayed in her room, under the blanket, with noise blockers in her ears. But even then, her body remembered. Her tail wouldn't stay still. Her ears burned with heat. Her thoughts were loud, filled with his voice saying, "Hello, everyone." It played again and again in her mind, and each time her stomach turned and her breath shook. She was scared. Back on her planet, there was an old story, long ago. The Felinor, her species, had instincts tied to sound, especially male voices. Their ancestors would react if the voice matched some ancient pattern, some sound that awakened the bond reflex. But that was just a myth now. Or so she thought, until now. 2 days passed. Nyari didn't leave her room. But she didn't know Daniel was searching for her. He had noticed her reaction in the crowd. The way she looked, shocked, then ran. He didn't understand why, but he was worried he might have said something wrong. He asked the staff, "Who was that girl in the back row with the cat ears and silver hair?" They gave him her name, Nyari. He waited near the library where she usually spent her time. Finally, he saw her walking slowly, wearing a hood, her ears hidden, her steps unsure. "Nyari," he said gently. She froze. Her entire body tensed up. Her tail snapped out from under her coat and wrapped around her wrist tightly. Her ears pushed against her hood. She turned toward him slowly, eyes wide and glowing softly. "You?" she whispered. "Don't speak, please. I just wanted to say I'm sorry if I upset you," he said, even softer now. She gasped. Her knees trembled. She dropped her book bag and ran again. Later that night, Nyari sat in her room again, hugging her pillow. Her tail was wrapped around her arm like a chain. Her eyes were red from crying. "What is happening to me?" she whispered to herself. "Why can't I stop this?" She had read about ancient instinct bonds that once triggered, the body would crave the sound again, and if the bond wasn't completed, it would only get worse. But she was a student, a normal girl. She never wanted this, never imagined her body would betray her like this. And it was all because of one human's voice. "I have to avoid him," she said to herself, no matter what. But deep in her heart, quiet part of her didn't want to. A part of her wanted to hear him speak again. Not just once, but again and again. Nyari woke up with her pillow still damp from last night's tears. Her body felt tired, like she had run a long race in her sleep, but the worst part was, she could still hear his voice in her mind. Every word Daniel had said echoed softly, like a song she couldn't forget. She grabbed her sound-dampening headset and put it on. Her ears twitched under the pressure, but at least it helped a little. She couldn't risk hearing his voice again, not even by accident. Today, she would stay hidden. No classes, no common halls. No dining area, just books, shadows, and silence. She left her dorm early. Wearing a long cloak, she kept her head down and moved quickly, avoiding eye contact, avoiding noise. She chose the quietest corner of the library, a spot where no one usually came, and there she stayed, flipping pages she couldn't focus on, but deep inside, her heart was still racing. Daniel, meanwhile, was walking down the academy hallway. Thinking about that strange encounter, the girl Nyari looked terrified when he spoke to her. But it wasn't normal fear. It was something else. Something deeper. He remembered the way her tail had reacted, tight, fast, almost automatic. Like her body had a mind of its own, he felt guilty. Had he offended her without knowing? Was his tone too sharp? He decided to try again, but gently this time. Maybe if he could just talk to her properly, things would make sense. But finding her was not easy. For 2 days, Nyari stayed in hiding. She used the hidden walkways behind the gardens to move between buildings. She ate from vending machines late at night to avoid the dining hall. She even changed her voice settings to block any male audio frequencies. Just to protect herself from hearing him again, she told herself she was doing the right thing, that she was staying safe, that it would fade with time. But it didn't fade. It got worse. Her ears became more sensitive. Her tail twitched at random. Her breathing changed even at the memory of his voice at night. She would wake up from dreams where Daniel was just saying her name, yet her whole body would feel like it was on fire. This is not normal. She whispered to herself one night, curled up in bed. It's like I'm broken. Then, something happened while Nyari was in the library, hidden in her favorite dark corner. She heard soft footsteps. She froze, holding her breath. Then she heard someone say, Nyari. The voice, that voice. She almost dropped her datapad. Her tail instantly uncoiled and stood straight behind her. Her fingers clutched the desk, and her breathing became uneven. No, it was him. Daniel had found her. Don't speak, she whispered without turning around. Please, don't. He stopped, confused. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, he said gently. If I hurt you somehow, I didn't mean to. Nyari turned her face halfway, enough to show her glowing violet eyes and trembling lips. Her face was pale, but her cheeks had a blush she couldn't hide. Her ears twitched uncontrollably beneath her hood. It's not your fault, she said, voice trembling. It's my body. It reacts to your voice. I can't stop it. Daniel stepped back a little, surprised. My voice? He asked softly. She nodded. I read about it once. Ancient bonding instinct in my species. We thought it was gone, extinct, but something in your voice. Something woke it up. There was a long silence between them. Neither of them moved. The air felt thick, heavy with emotion and tension. Then Nyari said, I've been hiding from you because every time I hear you speak, my body loses control, my thoughts get blurry, and I feel strange things I don't understand. Her eyes dropped to the floor. It's not fair to you. So I tried to stay away. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time, he realized she wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of herself. He sat down slowly, keeping his voice soft. I'm not angry, Nyari, but maybe we can figure this out together. She looked up sharply, surprised. Together. He smiled. Yes, I won't say anything unless you want me to. We can set rules, limits. Whatever helps you feel safe. Nyari blinked, her eyes glistening. She wasn't used to kindness like this, not from anyone, and especially not from someone her instincts had marked so strongly later that night in her room. She sat on her bed holding a small recorder in her hand. Daniel had given it to her. It only played one thing, his voice, saying softly, "I'm here. Nyari, you don't have to be scared." She pressed play, her tail wrapped gently around her pillow, and for the first time in days, she smiled. Daniel couldn't sleep. Nyari's words kept spinning in his mind like a slow, strange song. Something in your voice woke it up. That wasn't just a random reaction. It was something deep, ancient, and maybe dangerous. He needed answers, so the next morning, he skipped his regular talk and walked straight to the Academy's xenobiology department. It was quiet, filled with large digital archives. He approached the AI librarian and asked, "Show me everything about Felinor species and sound-based instincts." The AI's lights blinked for a few seconds, then replied, accessing historical genetic data, cross-matching with extinct behavior files. A list of forgotten documents appeared. Most were hundreds of years old, marked mythical, obsolete, but one file stood out. It was called the Vocal Bond Reflex. Felinor Lineage Records Class. Forbidden. Daniel opened it. Inside, he found a chilling explanation. Long ago, the Felinor race had something called the Old Instinct Code. It was hidden inside their DNA, dormant, silent, but never fully erased. The reflex could only be triggered by a specific vocal pattern, found in very rare tones, especially in human male voices. When triggered, the affected Felinor female would feel an overwhelming desire to bond with the voice's source. Emotionally, physically, and even spiritually, the document warned. Once the instinct is awakened, it must be fulfilled. If ignored, the subject may experience confusion, hallucinations, emotional breakdown, or even health decline. Daniel sat back in his chair, eyes wide. So this wasn't just some emotional misunderstanding. Nyari's body was responding to a primal genetic reflex. And his voice, was the match. Meanwhile, Nyari sat alone on the rooftop garden. Her cloak wrapped tight around her, the wind brushed her silver blue hair. But her thoughts were heavy. She stared at the small voice recorder in her hand, the one Daniel had given her. She didn't press play this time. She was scared of what might happen if she listened again. "I can't believe it's real," she whispered. "I thought those stories were lies, just fear tales for children." She remembered her grandmother's voice from long ago. "Be careful, little kitten. One day, a sound might come for you, and your heart will no longer be yours." Nyari had laughed at that time, but now, she wasn't laughing. She was trembling. A soft beep echoed behind her. She turned, expecting a classmate, but it was Daniel. Holding a data pad, his face looked serious but gentle. "I found something," he said. "You need to see this." Nyari didn't move. "Is it about the instinct?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes, and it's real, Nyari. It's written clearly, and it explains what's happening to you. It's not your fault." She looked away. "I don't want it to be real," she whispered. "If I accept it, it means I'm tied to you because of something I can't control." Daniel stepped closer, slowly. "Like approaching a wild animal, you're not tied to me," he said softly. "You still have a choice." "We both do." She turned toward him, her eyes wet with silent tears. "But my body, it doesn't ask, it just reacts. It craves your voice like air." Daniel knelt down beside her and handed her the datapad. She scrolled through the document with shaking hands, reading every word, her ears lowered, her breathing shallow. Then, she stopped at one line. "The reflex can evolve into a stable bond, but only if trust." respect, and care are formed between both parties. Her fingers froze. So, it doesn't have to be just instinct, she whispered. It can become something real. Daniel nodded, only if we wanted to. For a moment, they sat in silence. The wind moving gently around them. Nier's tail slowly unwrapped from her leg and touched the ground beside him. Her eyes met his. "Do you think," she began, "we could try to understand it together?" "I'd like that," Daniel replied with a small smile, "but only at your pace." Niari slowly took off her headset and whispered, "Say my name again." Daniel hesitated. "Are you sure?" She nodded, her hands trembling. "I want to." "Try. I want to know if I can hear it." Without falling apart, he leaned closer and gently said, "Niari?" She gasped but didn't run. Her fingers curled. Her tail flicked once, and her ears twitched, but she stayed still. Her eyes slowly filled with tears, but this time, they were not from fear. "I heard it," she whispered, "and I'm still here." Daniel smiled gently. Then that's our first step. Back in her room that night, Niari wrote something in her personal journal. The code is not a curse. It's a door. And he didn't kick it open, he knocked. And waited for me to answer. She placed the recorder on her pillow. "Pressed play once, Niari," the voice said again. And this time, she didn't flinch. Niari stood outside Daniel's dorm room. Her fingers hovered just above the door sensor. But she couldn't bring herself to press it yet. Her heart beat so loud she was sure someone in the hallway could hear it. She had thought about this moment all night. She had written notes, practiced lines, even tried to rehearse in the mirror, but none of it felt right. None of it prepared her for how vulnerable she truly felt. But now, she couldn't avoid it anymore. Not after everything he had done. Not after his patience, his care. And the way he said her name softly. Not like a master, but like someone asking for permission. She took a shaky breath, then pressed the sensor. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Daniel looked up from his desk. Surprised, but not unkind, he stood, smiling gently. "Niari," he said. Her tail twitched instantly. But she stood her ground. "Please." She whispered, holding up a shaky hand. "Let me speak before your voice makes me forget everything again." He nodded and stayed silent, just watching her with calm eyes. Niari stepped inside slowly. Her hood was off, letting her long silver-blue hair flow behind her. Her ears were flat, nervous, but not hidden anymore. She didn't want to hide now knots from him. "I've been trying to fight it," she began. "This feeling, this reaction. The way my body heats up, the way my mind gets blurry. Every time you speak, it's like my whole system resets." Daniel said nothing, letting her pour it out. "I thought it was just instinct," she said, pacing slowly. "But it's more than that now. I feel it even when I don't hear your voice, just knowing you're near. I feel it. I dream about it." She stopped, facing him. Her violet eyes shimmered with emotion. "And it's not just about the reflex anymore. I want to be near you because you make me feel safe. Not just because of instinct, but because of you." Daniel stepped closer, gently, giving her time to back away if she wanted. She didn't. "I've read every file, talked to every expert who'd listen," he said softly. "And they all say the same thing: this kind of reaction doesn't last long, not unless there's something more behind it." Niari blinked. "You mean?" "Emotion? Connection," he replied. "You're not some broken creature, Niari. You're someone whose instincts woke up but instead of running, you stayed and faced them." She lowered her gaze, embarrassed. "I still shake sometimes when I hear you say my name." Daniel smiled gently. "Then let's test something." He walked over to his bedside table and picked up a voice recorder. It was one Niari had left behind the other night. He handed it to her. "Play it," he said. "Let's see how far you've come." She hesitated, her hands trembling. Her thumb hovered over the button for a long time. What if I lose control again? She whispered, "Then I'll catch you." Daniel said simply. Niari closed her eyes and pressed play. Said Daniel's voice from the recorder, deep and calm. Her eyes fluttered. Her knees bent slightly, and she gasped, but she didn't fall. Her tail swayed slowly, and her hands grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself. Her ears twitched twice, then settled. I stayed standing, she said in disbelief. I'm still here. Daniel nodded with pride. You're stronger than you think. Then something unexpected happened. Niari stepped forward and hugged him. Not tight, but close enough that she could feel the rhythm of his chest. His hands hovered, unsure at first, then gently rested on her back. I'm scared, she whispered into his chest. Because I don't know what I'm becoming, but I think I want to become it with you. Daniel didn't speak. Not right away. His silence was warm, comforting, not empty. He simply held her as her tail wrapped loosely around his wrist, not tightly this time, but like a ribbon, soft and slow. After some time, they sat beside each other on the edge of the bed. Niari stared at her hands while Daniel looked out the window. What happens now? She asked quietly. I don't know, he admitted, but we can take it one step at a time. She smiled softly. Then let's make a rule. What kind of rule? You can only say my name, she said, turning to him. If you mean it. If it comes from your heart. Daniel looked into her glowing violet eyes and nodded. Deal. Then he leaned in slightly and whispered, not with power, but with purpose, Niari. And for the first time, her body didn't shake. Her heart did. For the first time since the instinct awoke, Niari felt peace. She wasn't cured, not completely. Her ears still twitched when Daniel walked into a room. Her tail still curled tightly when he said her name, but it no longer felt like a storm. It felt like something new, like blooming, not breaking. Daniel and Niari began spending quiet time together. No crowds, no noise, just peaceful spaces, rooftop gardens. Empty classrooms, quiet forest trails near the academy walls. And always soft voices. No sudden words, no surprises. Daniel was careful with every sound. He avoided saying her name unless she asked. And he learned to speak slower, with rhythm. His voice became a melody. Her body no longer feared it. Welcomed it. Niari also trained herself. She practiced breathing, standing still, and even holding eye contact while he spoke. Slowly, she started to feel proud of her progress. Her instincts were still alive, but now she was the one in control. One afternoon, they sat under a glowing crystal tree in the outer courtyard. The sun was soft, casting gold light through its blue leaves. Niari leaned back against the trunk, her legs stretched, her tail calmly swaying over the grass. Daniel sat beside her, drawing something on a data pad. What are you sketching? She asked, something I've never seen before. He smiled, a catgirl resting without fear. She rolled her eyes, blushing. I'm not resting. I'm watching you. Oh, should I be nervous? He teased. No, she said, quietly. But you should know something. He turned toward her. I don't just feel safe around you, she said slowly. I feel connected, like the instinct has changed into something warmer. She placed a hand gently on her chest. Now, when I hear your voice, it doesn't make me dizzy, it makes me feel calm. Daniel didn't speak, but he reached out and softly took her hand. His fingers were warm, steady, her tail wrapped loosely around his wrist again. Not from panic, but comfort. But outside their little world, others were watching. The academy staff had noticed the change in Niari. She no longer hid, no longer skipped meals or missed classes, but she spent more and more time with the human. Some of the teachers whispered, others observed. But one Eldra strict and traditional Filiner named Sari was not pleased. She shows signs of a completed instinct bond, he said, during a quiet meeting. And that bond was not formed through official process. The human triggered it without consent. Daniel didn't do it on purpose. The director argued it was accidental. And she has clearly chosen to stay near him of her own will. That may be, Sari replied coldly, but by Felinor law, a full instinct bond must be honored. Or removed, if not completed. She will suffer, if not broken. She will be exiled. That night, Niari was called to the staff tower. Daniel waited outside the chamber doors, pacing with worry. He didn't know what they would say to her, only that the elder had demanded a formal hearing. Inside, Niari sat alone in front of the council table. Elder Sari stood at the Senna. You are Niari, daughter of the late Lorena of House Glacia, correct? Yes, she replied softly. And you admit your instincts were awakened by a human voice? Yes, and that you now experience emotional attachment beyond the reflex. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, the elder frowned. Then, you must complete the bond formally, or undergo a memory purge. The law does not allow half-bonds to remain open. Neri's eyes filled with fear. But I'm not ready to bond fully. Then your only path is removal, he said firmly. Daniel couldn't wait any longer. He pushed through the doors and walked into the chamber, ignoring the staff trying to stop him. Wait, he said. Don't make her choose like this. Sari's eyes narrowed. You do not speak here, human. I will, if it's about her. Daniel said, standing tall. I didn't mean to trigger anything, but I care about her deeply. Not because of some reflex, but because of who she is. He turned to Niari. And if there's a way to help you without forcing you, I'll do it. Niari looked up at him, her ears twitching from the emotion in his voice. Then she stood and stepped beside him, her voice soft but firm. I choose him, she said. But not because of instinct, not because of fear. I choose him because I trust him. The chamber fell quiet. Then the elder sighed. If you both choose willingly, then the bond will be recognized. He placed a glowing crystal on the table. Touch this together, and your bond will be sealed not just by instinct, but by law. Niari looked at Daniel. He nodded once, and together they reached out. Their hands met on the crystal surface. It pulsed. Soft light spread between their fingers, wrapping around their hands, their hearts. It wasn't magic hit. Was understanding, choice, and connection. As the light faded, Niari whispered, your voice brought the instinct, but your heart made it real. Asterisk, the glowing bond crystal faded to soft blue, but the weight of what had just happened still hung in the air. Niari stood beside Daniel in front of the council table, her hands still touching his. They had completed the bond, not out of instinct, not out of pressure, but through choice. But Elder Sari did not smile. He looked at them with sharp eyes, his tail flicking once in disapproval. You may have formed the bond by hand, he said slowly, but your hearts have not faced what comes next. Niari blinked. What do you mean? The bond is not just a glow or a law, Sari said. It must be tested, or it means nothing. Daniel stepped forward. We've already been tested. Haven't you seen how hard it's been for her? For us, Sari's voice was cold. Emotion is not proof. Tradition is, by Felinor law. A bonded pair must endure a reflection trial to show that the bond is not weakness, but strength. Daniel clenched his jaw. He didn't know what a reflection trial was, but the way Sari said it didn't sound kind. What kind of trial? Niari asked, trying to hide the tremble in her voice. You will both enter the cradle room, a sealed chamber deep under the academy. Sari explained. Inside, the bond will be tested by ancient stimulus sound, memory, and instinctal pressure. You must face each other, hear each other, feel everything. He continued. If the bond is true, you will remain whole. If not, it will collapse. Daniel looked at Niari. She was pale, her ears twitching slowly. I can't go back to that feeling, she whispered. That wild heat, the loss of control. I won't let it control you, Daniel said gently. If we go through this, we go together. Niari took a deep breath, then nodded. Then we accept the trial. Later that evening, they were led to the base of the academy far beneath the quiet halls, past layers of old tunnels and stone paths, lit with faint crystal light. A massive door stood at the end, carved with symbols in Feliner script above the door. A glowing sign read, Cradle of Voice where instinct meets truth. The guard opened the door. You have until sunrise, he said. Once sealed, no one can enter or hear what happens inside. Daniel and Niari stepped into the chamber. The door closed behind them with a deep thud. Inside, the room was empty, but it pulsed with a strange energy. The walls shimmered like water, and the air felt thick, not hot, but heavy. Niari's ears twitched immediately, and she stepped closer to Daniel. I can already feel it, she whispered. The pressure. Like my blood's remembering everything. Daniel reached out and took her hand. We stay together, he said. No matter what this place shows us. Then a voice filled the air. Old, soft female tone, repeating, say the name that calls your soul, say the name that makes you whole. The room darkened and glowing mist rose from the floor. Daniel felt a heat in his chest, then heard his own voice echoing from the walls. Niari, the echo said, deep and gentle. Niari gasped, her knees wobbling, her body responded immediately, tail stiff. Breathing sharp, eyes wide, but this time she didn't fall. She clutched Daniel's hand tighter and stared forward. I can feel everything, she whispered. The first day I heard you, the panic, the rush. It's all coming back, but this time, she said, breathing deeply, I know it's you. Not just a sound. Suddenly, the room shifted. Daniel began to hear her voice. To not words, just soft sounds, purrs, whispers of his name, and for the first time, he felt something strange inside, like her emotions were flowing through him. Like her bond was reaching into his chest. His heart beat faster, his skin felt warmer. Is this how it feels for you? He asked. Niari nodded. Yes. Every time, they stood face to face now. The bond between them glowing faintly in their hands, their feelings crashing like waves instinct. Memory, fear, desire, comfort. I want to say your name, Daniel said, his voice shaking. Not to control you, but to call you, then say it. Niari whispered, if you mean it. He stepped closer, and in the thick, glowing air, he whispered, Niar. Her breath hitched. Her body froze, but this time, she didn't run. She didn't cry. She stepped into his arms and held him tightly. It doesn't hurt anymore, she said. It feels right. When the chamber door opened at sunrise. The guards found them sitting together on the floor, arms wrapped around each other. The crystal light gently glowing between their hands. The trial was over. Male Siri stood at the edge of the hallway, watching them walk out hand in hand. He didn't speak, but he bowed slightly, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement. They had passed not just the law, not just the trial, they had passed each other's hearts. The Academy Gardens had never felt this calm. Niari sat beneath a glowing tree, her back against its warm bark, her long silver blue hair swaying gently in the soft breeze. Her ears twitched lazily. Not from fear or tension, but peace. Her tail slowly moved across the grass like a painter's brush, light and relaxed. Daniel sat beside her, arms resting on his knees, staring up at the stars that had begun to appear in the sky. A quiet silence stretched between them, not empty, but full of understanding. Neither of them needed to speak yet. They had already said the most important words in the cradle room, and somehow, that was enough. Since the trial, everything had changed but also stayed the same. There were no official announcements, no loud celebrations, but word spread quickly. The bond between the human and the Felinor girl had survived the ancient test. Some students whispered with wonder, some with doubt. Some staff avoided eye contact. Others nodded respectfully when they passed, but Daniel and Nyari didn't care about that anymore. They walked the halls together, quiet and close. Her ears didn't flinch at his voice anymore. Her steps didn't hesitate. Her eyes no longer held fear and warmth, and Daniel. He had stopped speaking carefully. He still used a gentle tone. Yes, but not because he was afraid of triggering her instinct, but because he respected it. One afternoon, they sat in a quiet study room. Nyari placed her datapad on the desk and looked at Daniel with a playful smile. "You're talking more now," she said. He chuckled. "Should I stop?" She shook her head. "No. I like it now. It took time, but your voice doesn't burn anymore." Daniel leaned in slightly. "Then what does it do?" Nyari blushed, her ears twitching softly. "It hums inside me, like a song that makes my heart warm." Daniel smiled. "Then I hope I never stop humming." She laughed, and the sound was real light, free. The kind of laugh she had never let out before all this began. Later that night, they sat on the dorm rooftop. The stars above them shined like diamonds scattered across a dark ocean. Nyari leaned, her head on Daniel's shoulder, her tail wrapped gently around his arm. "I used to hate this part of myself," she whispered. "The instinct, the heat, the reaction. It made me feel broken, like a puppet to my own body." Daniel stayed quiet, letting her speak. "But now," she continued, "I think I was just waiting for the right person to help me understand it." Daniel looked down at her softly. "Do you still feel the bond?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, but it doesn't scare me anymore. Now, it feels like a heartbeat that matches yours." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, smooth, stone dark with a silver line running through it. "I found this during our first walk after the bond," he said. "You were laughing, chasing butterflies near the forest." Trail Nyari blinked. Surprised. "You kept a rock." He smiled. "No. I kept a reminder. That moment was when I first saw you. Not just the bond, not the reflex, not the pressure, just you, smiling." Nyari touched the stone gently, her fingers brushing against his. "Daniel," she whispered, "do you know what your voice is to me now?" He tilted his head. "Tell me." She leaned closer, her lips near his ear, and whispered, "It's home." The next day, the academy held a small, private ceremony in the Crystal Hall. The director stood before them, smiling proudly though. "Your bond was unexpected. It has become a symbol," she said. "Not just of instinct, but of choice, care, and trust between two different souls." Nyari wore a soft violet dress, her ears decorated with silver rings. Daniel wore a dark earth-style tunic, simple but neat. They stood before the bonding stone. Their hands linked. The stone glowed again, but not like before this time. It glowed with them, responding to their joined energy, and when Daniel spoke Nyari's name in front of everyone, she didn't flinch. She smiled, her tail rising like a banner. That evening, after the ceremony, they returned to their favorite spot under the glowing tree. Nyari rested her head in Daniel's lap, her eyes half closed. "Do you remember the first time you said my name?" she asked sleepily. He chuckled. "I remember you nearly fell down, and now look at me," she whispered. "Calm, safe. Yours?" Daniel ran a hand gently through her hair. "You were never mine," he said softly. "You were always your own, but you chose to stay." Nyari smiled with closed eyes. "And you?" "Never once used your voice to control me." As the stars sparkled above and the gentle breeze passed through the trees, Daniel leaned down and whispered her name once more. Niari. She didn't shiver. She didn't blush. She didn't run. She smiled and whispered back, "Say it again," because now his voice wasn't a trigger or a test. It was a promise, and she would never be afraid of it again.